Hey everyone, so in this video I am going to show you how to play this chord progression in a minor key. So we're going to do the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the cadential 6/4 chord, the 5 chord, and then back to the 1 chord. I'm going to actually play through all the chords first, and then we will jump in. As you see, my right hand's starting in root position on the 1 chord, and then the left hand is just playing the single notes in the bass clef. So I'm going to play through all 12 keys, and then I will explain. I'm back at C minor. So the first thing that you want to do when you're learning this chord progression, and I've written it out in C minor just because I think that's a good kind of key to learn it in first of all before you transpose it to different keys, is you want to know the scale that you're playing in, because you need to know all the notes in order to make the chords. So I'm building my C minor scale by taking C, going up a whole step, then a half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Okay, so that's how I build my natural minor scale. If you notice, if you look at the C major scale, the whole steps and half steps are different from the minor scale. And you'll also notice there's 3 notes that are lowered. Okay, so those 3 notes that are lowered are the third. So the third becomes E to E flat. The 6th of the scale, A, becomes A flat, and the 7th of the scale, the B, becomes the B flat. Okay, so do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, te, do. Te, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, as opposed to the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. So we're dealing with these notes when we build the chords. And the first chord that we're going to need to know is the 1 chord. So every note of the scale has a different scale degree. This is scale degree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. So my 1 chord is, I'm going to take the first note, the 1 scale degree, and skip a note, skipping the D, going to the E, skipping another note, F, going to the G. So you'll notice the chord is built on thirds. Right? I'm looking at this chord right here. C, E flat, G. Okay, I need to know my 4 chord because that is the next chord in the chord progression. So how do I find the 4 chord? Well, I go up to the 4th scale degree. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be F, and same thing, just using the notes that are in the C minor scale, I'm going to skip the next note, G, go to A flat, skip the next note, B flat, go to C. So that's an F minor chord. So far I have my 1 chord, and then my F minor chord, which is my 4 chord. Now, the cadential 6/4 chord is just a decoration of the 5 chord. So think about it as the 1 chord in first inversion. So here's my 1 chord, not first inversion, but second inversion. So we have G, C, and E flat. And you'll notice there's a bigger gap right here than there is right here. Okay, so this interval is a 4th, right? And then this from C to E flat is a 3rd. So the reason it's called a cadential 6/4 is because when you double the bass, right, you have the G in the bass, okay? The C is a 4th above that G, and then the E flat is a 6th above the G, and the cadential 6/4 gets resolved to becoming the 5 chord. Now, what's the 5 chord in C minor? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I go up to the 5th scale degree, and normally, if I skip a 3rd, I get to the B flat and then the D, but for 5 chords, even if we're in minor, we actually want to raise the te, the 7th, to making it major, because when we resolve from the 5 chord to the 1 chord, it's going to sound more dramatic than if we were to keep it in minor. So just because it sounds better, the tendency is to raise that 7th degree. Okay, so we have our ingredients. We have the 1 chord, C minor, C, E flat, G. We have F minor, which is our 4 chord. And then we have the cadential 6/4, which is just the 1 chord, the C minor, in second inversion. And then we have the 5 chord, which is just the G major chord, right? Because we raised that 7th degree. And then we have the 1 chord. Okay? Now we have to learn the left hand part, okay? So the left hand for the 1 chord, I'm just gonna play the root. And then for the 4 chord, I'm gonna play, again, the F minor chord, so the root F. For the cadential 6/4, we're gonna think about the bass note is now gonna be G down here, right? Okay, and then resolving to the 5 chord. Now I did it like this just because I was kind of going for a good voice leading, but actually I should show you the cadential 6/4 this way. Okay, so G, C, E flat. Okay, and I have the G doubled in the left hand, and then I'm gonna go to the 5 chord. Right, G in the bass, doubling the root, 3, 5, and then going back to the 1 chord. Now we could jump around like that, but what we want to do is we want to use good voice leading, because good voice leading makes it sound smoother. It makes it sound like it kind of evolves from one chord to another, and it's just easier to play, to be honest. So what we want to look at when we're going from one chord to another is look for common tones. So here, going from the C chord to the F chord, we both have a C in common, right? So I can actually keep that C common tone and just move the E flat and the G, the 3rd and the 5th of my C minor chord, up to the root and the 3rd of my F minor chord. And then the 5th will be on the bottom. Now it's still an F minor chord because I have the F on the bass, right? It's on an F minor with a C in the bass. It still has the F in the bass. Okay, so I'm going from my 1 chord to my 4 chord, keeping that C in the bass. And then for my cadential 6/4 chord, remember it's just a C minor chord with a doubled 5th, okay, which is G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's a C minor chord, so from here I'm just gonna go back, keep that C common tone, and my left hand's gonna go up to G, so I have 2 Gs. And the distance from the C to the G, if we octave reduce it, there's my 4th, and then the E flat to the G is a 6th, right? Cadential 6/4, and the 6/4 resolves down to the 5/3, and in this case, I'm going to keep the G, and this is E flat's going to go down, becoming the 5th of my 5 chord, and the 4, the C is going to go down to becoming the 3rd of my cadential 6/4 chord. Okay, and remember our 5 chord is major, because we, instead of B flat, we're raising that 7th degree, and then we're going to go back to C minor, our 1 chord, keeping the G common tone. Okay, and that way I can keep common tones. There's little amount of movement, and you'll notice there's contrary motion. So between here, the bass, and the upper voices, they're moving in contrary motion away from each other, and then back closer to each other while maintaining that common tone. Keeping common tone G, and then keeping the common tone G as we resolve back to this, okay? So if we were in G minor, right, so I have my G, B flat, D, G in the bass, going to the 4 chord, going to the cadential 6/4, and the 6 and the 4 resolve down, becoming the 4 and the 3, going back to the 1 chord, okay? Now, for this, I should know what is my G minor scale. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, right? And then I know, okay, from these notes, I get to build these chords. My 1 chord, my 4 chord, my 1 chord in second inversion, right? Or with a D in the bass, I should say. And then my 5 chord, which is normally, it's gonna be minor, but we wanna raise that 7th if we're in the key of G minor, and then back to the 1, okay? So my advice is learn it in C minor first, get that in your hands so you know exactly what's going on, and make sense of where you're moving, okay? So moving from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, keeping C, which is the root of C, which becomes the fifth of F minor, and then you have the root and the third of F minor. Here, going to the cadential 6/4, right? You have your double G, and then you have your C and the E flat, which are the 6 and the 4 of the cadential 6/4, which move down to the 5 and 3, keeping the G common tones, and then back to the C minor chord. So you'll want to learn this in all the keys, depending on your major, 5 keys, 7 keys, or 12 keys. So, and you can review what I did earlier in the video for those different keys. But I would just say stick to starting in root position for these. You can do them in, starting with the right hand on first inversion or second inversion, but if you want the easiest method, I would just do it this way for now.